Fam, good morning. What's going on? It is Kyle Henderson of Bama Football on YouTube. I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me yesterday as Alabama survives South Carolina. What's going on? Good morning. Today is Sunday. Today is October 13th. Today on the show. And before I get even to the show, let me ask you from the jump, just think about this. Is Alabama trending to be a better team, or are they trending to be a worse team? Are they trending to be better, or are they trending to be worse? Or maybe you're undecided. I don't know. What's going on today on the show? We're talking about the issues, and they do start up at the top as the head football coach. We're going to talk about the defense and that it is vulnerable. We're going to talk about Shane Beamer and some of the comments that he had in his postgame. Upon further review against South Carolina, the SEC football standing, it's kind of like the NFL light. I mean, you guys saw last night, LSU was able to beat Ole Miss. Vanderbilt beats Kentucky. We're going to showcase the SEC football standings. Remember, it's 1 versus 2 in SEC play this year for the SEC title game. Early thoughts on Bama versus Tennessee, and does Alabama still have that want, that desire to push forward? What's up, JWH78? Early comment says it's on Coach Kane Womack, and I think we continue to see that, for several seasons when people were pointing the finger at Pete Golding under Nick Saban. And rarely did they ever point the finger at Coach Saban. Obviously, Coach Saban's the GOAT. But I think the issues are clearly with Coach Kane Womack's defense. But I see a lot of issues that do start up at the top as well under Coach Kalen DeBoer. Now, can he fix those things? Probably so. I mean, it is relatively early in the season. But think about this. As you guys get checked in, and I appreciate you being here, Alabama has trailed in 3 consecutive games. Let me say that again. Alabama has trailed in 3 consecutive games. They trailed against Georgia, they trailed against Vanderbilt, and they trailed yesterday against South Carolina. I know, you're like, what? They trailed in 3 consecutive games? Look, if this is what you're comfortable with, then, be comfortable with it. But it doesn't seem like this is the standard for Alabama football. So you start to kind of dig into what is going on under Coach Kalen DeBoer. For me personally, I do feel that it's early enough in the season, and the amount of talent, no coach has ever taken over a program with more talent than Coach Kalen DeBoer. Never in the history of college football. But I started to see signs of a completely new environment to Alabama when they started to have special guests at the practice and, kind of the ice cream trucks, and when they changed it to the morning. I mean, I started to see holes. When I started to see different elements in the program, I wasn't used to it. I didn't like it. And I think you're starting to see some of those ramifications impact the overall program. All right. That's just my opinion. But the issues do start up top. I mean, I would imagine there's some sort of hierarchy and that he has to talk with Coach Kane Womack, but it doesn't seem like he feels that Alabama is in any sort of dire straits. I don't know. It feels uncomfortable knowing that Alabama football has been trailing in the last 3 games. Right? I mean, again, I ask you, if you're just checking in, it looks like it's someone's birthday. Is it Chase's birthday? Chase, what's up, man? Happy birthday to you. I hope that you have an incredible day and that you get all the rest and you have all the cake that you could possibly deserve, man. Happy birthday to you. But are you accustomed to this? How are you feeling about Alabama trailing in these last 3 games? I know there's people on much bigger platforms. For example, Mark Ingram, former Alabama running back, he's been very critical of Alabama football. They did pull out the dub, and you see what's going on in the SEC. It's interesting. Let me ask you this. How much of this do you feel is on Coach Kalen DeBoer? Do you think if he had a different defensive coordinator, everything would be absolutely fixed? Right? I mean, it seems like that's kind of a constant theme. Chris from New Jersey says that's another good thing. Could it be growing pains? Right? Kind of the changing with it. Patriot Life, what's up, man? See you inside the comment box. Seems Tennessee is having some of the same problems, taking Florida into overtime. That's the other thing, too, is like the SEC is NFL light. I mean, I'm going to showcase the SEC standings here in a minute. The SEC is absolutely wild. I mean, the amount of parity in the SEC, I don't think we've ever had this amount of parity in the SEC. Myron's like coming in with some optimism. 5-1 isn't the worst spot to be in. And that's another thing, too. This team, we could say, yeah, they could have lost to Georgia. They could, the Vanderbilt loss, and you could have lost to South Carolina, right? But they didn't, right? They beat Georgia, and they found a way to come back and beat South Carolina. So they are 5-1. I just think when we start to kind of dig into this team, it is a little bit worrisome about the direction. If you were to ask me, is this team trending to be better or trending to be worse? Like right now at this point in time, following that type of game, I would probably say down. But things change. I mean, you think about this. Think about the amount of momentum that you get from beating Tennessee on the road. If you beat Tennessee on the road, you move to 6-1. You move to 3-1 in SEC play. You see what I'm saying? You start to really kind of get that momentum going into a really challenging back end of the season. This was the part, like these games against Vanderbilt and against South Carolina, in my mind, and I'm sure in your mind, this wasn't supposed to be like the hard part. But I think all the games are hard now in SEC play. But the problem is now you got to go to Neyland Stadium. You got to go to LSU. You got to go to Oklahoma. You still have to play Auburn, whatever type of heartbeat they have left, right? You got to play Missouri. It's a still very challenging schedule that could still catapult Alabama into a very good position if they continue to just win. And that's something that Coach Kalen DeBoer said yesterday, right? He said, we continue to find ways to win. Another game down to the wire, finding games to win. There's a lot of parity in college football. You saw Oregon take down Ohio State. You saw Penn State find a way to win against USC. I mean, really right now, Texas, I think, they're the one team up top, but you look at the back end of their schedule, they still have some really challenging games as well. But in terms of like a complete team, I think you have Texas and what? I mean, do you really feel that Oregon is the number 2 team right now in the country? I would still feel confident if Alabama and Oregon played right now, to be honest. Dan Lanning was completely fired up. Dan Lanning's never beat Coach Kalen DeBoer, right? Steve Sarkisian's never beat Kalen DeBoer. And I still, look, and while Texas is playing at a very high level, I think that these college football, and we said this going into this year, this was going to be the most entertaining college football season we've ever had. And we're seeing it. I mean, last night, it was hard to peel away from the couch because every single game, I had to go to bed. I didn't even watch that Kansas State versus Colorado game, and I knew I'd wake up and there would be some sort of drama in it. I guess I haven't even looked at the box score, but I from what it sounds like, Colorado made a run to come back. I saw, I'm talking about topic 1 up at the top. The issues start up top with Coach Kalen DeBoer, as all issues do, right? It starts with the head coach, and then you kind of work your way down. And you find, and we went from such an animated coach on the sidelines to Coach Kalen DeBoer, who really doesn't seem to get upset. I mean, we've seen him, kind of get upset at different situations, but following the game, he was all smiles. And he was coming off the field, and he was just happy. That's fine. I mean, they did win. Coach Saban was the type of coach that we're accustomed to. He was mad when they were winning 42-3, right? He was furious. It's just, Kalen DeBoer is a different coach. So, he is winning. He's 5-1 here. He is finding ways to win. And what I would imagine that we all want to see from Coach Kalen DeBoer going forward is what he does with the defense. And I know the defense isn't his responsibility, but he's in charge of Coach Kane Womack. And I know the reporters asked about this yesterday or last week is what role does he have in playing with the defense, right? And changing things up. Bama King saying constructive criticism is always good, but we as a fan base need to do better. Now, it's a little bit bumpy, but, I would imagine that he can still make a real run at the SEC title. And how far Alabama wants to go. I mean, the talent on this team is just, every single year I never think Alabama's going to lose. Never. And you look at the back end of the schedule, it's tough. But the issues do start with Coach Kalen DeBoer. It's up to him to put things in place, to continue to steer things back on course and win football games. And he is. He's won 5 football games out of 6. Look, when we kind of dive into this game yesterday, before we get to our next topic, you look at Lenore Sellers, who isn't one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC, but he had his best performance all against Alabama's defense. He was 23 of 31, 238 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was 74% completion percentage. That is following Diego Pavia, who was 80% against Alabama, right? Like, you got to, I mean, that, and even going into this game, and I just uploaded Shane Beamer's press conference, he said at the back end of his press conference, based on the way that Alabama's defense plays, our wide receivers are going to have opportunities to make plays. And they did. You come up with the big touchdown in the end. Their wide receivers, they did a pretty good job manufacturing yards against the Crimson Tide. I mean, you look at the production on the bottom left. Simon caught 5 for 22. Raheem Sanders, our running back, caught 4 of 25. And they continue to move the sticks against Alabama. They had some success on third downs. They were able to move the football, right? We'll talk about Alabama's stats in just a second. But I thought South Carolina, I mean, for a team that has been somewhat lackluster on the offensive side, I felt that they were able to move the chains. And I think that the defense continues to struggle on third downs. And you know what's crazy is the fourth downs for Alabama, they allowed another touchdown on fourth down. It's like, it's mind-boggling. You get into a situation where teams feel comfortable going against Alabama on fourth downs, right? Alabama on the flip side, and we'll talk about Jalen Milroe in just a second. He was 16 of 23, 209, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Jam Miller, 12 of attempts for 42 yards, and Justice Haynes, 8 carries for 26. Jeremy Bernard led the team in receiving with 4 receptions for 89 yards. Leading the team in tackles was Keon Sapp, who had 12 tackles. Kind of to rehash this game, and again, I've said this, and what is interesting to think about is Alabama has trailed 3 times this in the last 3 games. That's crazy. So they start out 7-0. And honestly, that drive at the beginning, and I know opening drives are completely scripted, these opening drives are like magnificent. Yo, they looked amazing. I was like, oh, they're about to just blow South Carolina out of the water. Then they go up 14-0. Here comes South Carolina, make it 14-7. And then, man, as soon as Jalen Milroe, and we'll talk about his play, the intentional grounding caused kind of a series of events where the team just started going down. And I get it. Coach Kalen DeBoer addressed that he wanted to be aggressive with his play calling when they had like a minute before halftime. I was kind of screaming on our watch along that he should just take them into halftime and have it 14-9 because South Carolina was going to get the football anyways, right? So Jalen Milroe comes out and they force it. He forced that. That was a bad interception. And South Carolina is able to go in with so much momentum, now trailing 14-12, right, after the field goal that they made. And then they come out and take the lead 19-14. Neil says it's not just us. NIL has brought parity across the entire board. I think that's a really good point as well. Yo, and how about those edge rushers for South Carolina? Yo, those guys, they were fantastic, right? You look at kind of side by side yesterday. Total yards, South Carolina had 374. They had more offense than Alabama, which is wild. And they also controlled the time of possession, which isn't, by a surprise. They had 242 passing yards. That is a surprise to me. 132 on the ground. Penalties, they had 6 for 49. And Alabama had 7 for 13. These two teams get a ton of penalties. We knew that. I set the over-under total penalties at 15, but they have 13, right? Alabama usually averages 73 yards in penalties. Yesterday they have 66. But like the stats below this, first downs, they had 23 first downs, 7 of 15 on third downs, and 1 of 2 on fourth down. So, third downs and fourth downs. What was interesting, though, too, is at the beginning of the first half, South Carolina, I think, was 0 of 5 on third downs and then made adjustments and were able to move the sticks. Before I get to my next slide and talking about kind of upon further review of this game, I want to talk about the defense or the lack thereof because it is scary to hear a head football coach like Shane Beamer talk about the night before the game, before they went to sleep, he tells all his players, look, based on the way that Alabama plays defense, our wide receivers are going to have opportunities. At the beginning of the press conference, he says, we expected to win this game. We know who else said that is last weekend's quarterback. So I get it. As a competitor, you expect to win every game, but I don't think that teams fear Alabama anymore. I really don't. I think that they see Alabama as vulnerable. I think that they see Coach Kalen DeBoer as soft. I think that they see Coach Kane Womack is over his head. And I feel that the parity in NIL has made teams, feel like they could pump their chest. Beamer pointed out the fact that Alabama hadn't played an 11 o'clock a.m. game. Well, yeah, that could come into play, but also Alabama practices now in the morning, right? I didn't see a lot of intensity from this team. I saw the TV broadcast kept showing Jalen Milroe just on the sideline sitting down. I saw the team going into the locker room. They looked deflated, right? I feel that teams don't fear Alabama. I feel last night, and I know the game was at night between Tennessee and Florida, and we all watched that game. It seemed like there was so much more energy and enthusiasm from Tennessee's defense and just their overall team than there was at Alabama. Now I know Alabama got excited at the end when DeMonte Jackson gets the interception and they seal the game, but overall it seemed like they lacked emotion and energy. So I do think a lot of the defense is on the schematics of Coach Kane Womack and kind of the lack of pressure. Now, they did have 4 quarterback sacks yesterday, which was exciting to see. They came up and, in some critical situations, the defense did. But they also did allow big plays. You look at the touchdown when Zay Mincy was in, right? You look at the touchdown that they got on DeMonte Jackson. You look at the fact that they were able to get 23 first downs. It was really concerning when DeMonte Jackson left. I'm glad that he came back because you had Xavier Brown, a freshman. You had Jalen Mbakwe, a freshman. You had Zay Mincy, a freshman, out on the field at the same time. And I don't even know if Red Morgan might have been on the field too, throwing another freshman, right? So those guys are young. It was a bright spot. You know who's playing pretty well is Jalen Mbakwe. Like, I'm a little bit nervous about Zay and even still Red kind of getting on the field. But I thought that we've seen some good things from Jalen Mbakwe. I think he's a good open field tackler. I think he's played good in coverage. Is he ready to be like an absolute starter? Probably not. But I kind of saw like a bright spot with Jalen Mbakwe yesterday. All right, let's go on upon further review. There's a lot of problems with the defense, clearly. Like, I want to see more pass rush. I don't know how I feel about kind of the reconstruction of the defense. Because when you look to the players that Alabama has, like Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson, L.T. Overton still playing at a high level, it's just, it's not it. Do I think any of these guys should be fired right now? No. But this isn't it. And I don't know if it's because like grass basketball. I don't know if it's because of NIL that it's made more parity. Because if you fire Womack or something like that, it's like I don't know if that fixes anything right now. I think it probably take away more momentum than Alabama. Plus, I think Dylan brings up a really good point. The slow ass play calling from Kane Womack to the players, I think, is putting Alabama in bad positions. That's a really good point. All right, let's go on upon further review. These are just a couple things that stood out to me from this game when I look back at the stats when I was watching the game with you. If there's anything else that I missed or that you want to add, feel free to add it inside the comment box. So starting up top, Alabama has trailed in each of its last 3 games. And that came to me when I was looking at the box score of this game. I even forgot that South Carolina, just for a little bit, took the lead of this game, right? And then I was like, damn, they were trailing against Georgia. Clearly they were trailing against Vanderbilt. And they were trailing yesterday. Like, that is not what we are accustomed to. I mean, do we want to get comfortable with this? Is that how even the SEC is? Because I still see Alabama as like at the pinnacle with like way better players than everybody else and this and that. And like to think that they've trailed in each of the last games is scary. I mean, look at the next 3 games, right? The next 3 games are Tennessee, Missouri, and LSU. It is like, that's scary. And 2 out of the 3 of those games, they're on the road. Neyland Stadium in Death Valley. Coach Kalen DeBoer, if they had trouble in Vanderbilt in front of 28,000 Alabama fans, Rocky Top's crazy. That place was absolutely wild last night. That was the energy. LSU last night, that place was wild against Ole Miss. Jeremiah Taylor showing some love to Justin Jefferson. Myron's right, man. We're about to enter the hard part of the schedule. Rude Boy's like, stop bringing up Saban. He doesn't work here anymore. 100%. And that's interesting. He does have an office there. And Coach Kane Womack said he has visited with Coach Saban plenty of times. You wonder if that's completely cut off. I think it is. But, I mean, they did say he has an office right at the stadium, right? And whoever took over the defense was going to be under a microscope anyways because Coach Saban was in charge of the defense. And Brian, you bring up a point about the penalties. If you look at the penalties side by side, Alabama has way more penalties than it did last year. That was one of kind of the glaring facts when I look at the teams like side by side. They're averaging about 40 more yards of penalties per game this year compared to last year. This quarterback, I mentioned that he had the best game against Bama, right? Lenore Sellers, 74%, 238 yards. We continue to see back-to-back quarterbacks have success. Really, 3 quarterbacks in a row. Carson Beck was able to, what did he throw for 469? Then you have Pavia, spun the ball, and then you have Lenore Sellers have the best game of his entire season. This guy hasn't even gone over 60%. To see him going over 74%, is concerning. And what was also concerning is I saw, and I'm sure you saw this too, South Carolina started running the same plays that Vanderbilt was running. They started running some option, right, from the triple option where they had motion over the wide receiver, and they started running the shovel pass, right? Man, Neil's feeling good. He's got Bama beats Tennessee. Alabama, by the way, opens up in a 2.5 point favorite. Scott says, we are not at the pinnacle anymore. We all got to get off this hype train. Roll Tide forever. We can win if we get serious, but with the coaches are so calm, that concerns me. That does concern me too. I'm used to old school coaching, but I think it's a different way of coaching, which it might not be that impactful. We don't know. We're not in the locker room. It seems like the players really like these guys because they can, they have more freedom. They can listen to music or whatever, but they're winning. Dylan is saying, do you know why he threw for 70%? We only blitzed 10% of the time. Yeah, I know that's been a stat that's been brought up. There's limited pass rush, and I think the sacks yesterday were kind of equated to maybe a couple were from a blitz, but I think some of the other ones were because it might have been a coverage sack or, Alabama's defense just kind of made some good plays. I know Deontay Lawson, played really well. I think Jahad Campbell had his first sack of the year last year. This other fact is, and I've talked about this earlier, Shane Beamer said, we knew our wide receivers would have opportunities. I think every single team is saying that before they play Alabama. I think they're looking at Alabama's secondary, and they're like, look, we're going to make plays. You know what? This Lenore Sellers, he missed on a touchdown pass. So did Jalen Milroe. We're going to talk about Jalen Milroe next. Nicholas is saying he's being their friend, not their coach. I would probably, it definitely does seem like that. David, I felt, and I know people have difference of opinions about Roll Tide Willie, but in my personal opinion, I felt immediately when I saw that Roll Tide Willie was at practice and when he was hanging out with the recruits and the first guy on campus, that's when it I knew things were completely different. that was just kind of one of the things that I continue to see, like the music and I don't even know if that equates to how they're playing, but you start to ask yourself those questions. Carlos is saying Deontay Lawson have a great game. I was talking about Jahad Campbell. I can look up the Pro Football Focus grades. It's one thing that I didn't show today. Usually I show the Pro Football Focus grades. Nobody really, there wasn't like any outstanding grades. In fact, it was interesting. Elijah Pritchett on the offensive side had a Pro Football Focus grade of 70, which I think was the highest on the offensive side. And I saw Elijah Pritchett getting eaten up at the right tackle position, which kind of like is a good segue point to our next topic, which is Milroe. Pastor B saying that Alabama fans are just spoiled. Hell yeah, we're spoiled. When you have Coach Saban, you have greatness every single, and I think it seems like Coach, I don't know. Is Coach Kalen DeBoer like taking accountability, or are we just kind of like navigating through it? Timothy, I'll do my call-in show tomorrow during my larger show tomorrow. I'm with Myron here. Yeah, Angel, I saw that flop too. That's the other thing is there's so much flopping going on, right? It's like soccer. All right, so we look at Jalen Milroe, and he clearly had a tough day at the ballpark, right? This was his worst performance that we've seen so far. In the interceptions that he's thrown prior to this game, I equate those interceptions to tipped balls, good play from the defense, the way that the football bounces. For example, like against Vanderbilt, guy made a good play. He threw it to Ryan Williams. The ball pops up. The guy makes a play. Throws it to C.J. Dupree against Georgia. Hits C.J. Dupree in the hands. Pops off. The guy intercepts it. Against South Carolina, he had an intentional grounding, right? He had two interceptions that were really like directly on him. The forced pass before halftime, that was a bad judgment call on Jalen Milroe. And then I don't understand why he kind of lofted that one up to his receiver on the left, and you had the corner kind of like just sneak up and make the play. Like those are both on Jalen. And I felt, at least from what I saw, and maybe you guys, if anybody was at the game, maybe you saw, and I saw, Jalen always hits the guy's hands before they go into the locker room and stuff like that. It just seemed like there was a kind of a lack of energy from him yesterday. It seemed like a lack of energy for the entire team. Like, because they kept on showing him sitting on the bench, kind of like frustrated. I don't know. He walked out the field, and, I don't think he was smiling. But what we've seen from Jalen prior to this game has been an incredible season. I mean, what do you still have? 2 touchdowns, Sarah? I appreciate the love. Thank you so much. Rams Norris TV. I think that Milroe lost some confidence with the teams over the last 2 games. Our team on paper is better, but due to coaching, this team is a step behind last year's. Yeah, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And, maybe this team will kind of, start to amp up towards these bigger parts of the game. I don't know. It's just, it seems like they do lack energy at times. We got 433 on. Appreciate you guys being here. Just kind of rehashing the game. If you guys have any feedback, definitely dump it into the comment box. Jeremiah is saying regarding Jalen Milroe's second interception, I don't think he saw the corner. Yeah, I don't think so either, because even when the corner came kind of from that angle, he just kind of hopped up and just made the play. Mike is saying, I'm surprised folks haven't showed up to Womack and DeBoer's house with the U-Haul. Yeah, I mean, Coach, we talked about that as well. I mean, the last 3 quarterbacks have really had their way with the Alabama defense. The way that Alabama has played on third down in these last 2 games, hasn't been it. You're about to go into a hostile environment. I would imagine against, maybe the best quarterback that you've played, besides Carson Beck. And a quarterback that is, very capable and, can move the sticks, not only throwing the football, but running. I mean, this guy is He's tough. I've been practicing saying Nico's name, the last couple of days. I know I'm going to have to say it a bunch. And look, if Shane Beamer feels that his wide receivers were going to make opportunities, just imagine how Josh Heupel feels. I mean, the last time that Alabama was up in Rocky Top, I don't have to remind you what happened. Myron with the super chat. 5-1 playing very bad shows the potential. You've been optimistic, man. I appreciate it. I try to be optimistic too when kind of looking at this team. It's just like there's some glaring things that I think need to be brought up. But Jalen Milroe, that clearly wasn't his best game. Still overall, I think on the season, what does he have? Like 1,700 yards and 22 total touchdowns this year? The thing about him, too, Jalen, is one thing that you can't say is, yeah, that was, not his best performance. But when you get into the back of these games and the daunting schedule, he has an ability to make big plays in big-time situations. Like late game, the guy is amazing. But that game yesterday wasn't it. They all looked deflated. Those 11 a.m. games they're not good for the soul. Let me ask you this. I always like to get feedback. So what I usually do is just ask you a yes or no type question. Let me try to enunciate this the best that I can. Are you surprised with the lack of touches by the running backs? Yes or no? Are you surprised by the lack of touches from the running backs? And while you guys answer that with yes or no, Kimberly says, I got a question. Did they do the new top 25 yet? No, they haven't released the new top 25. That usually comes around like 11 a.m. to like 1 p.m. Central Time. And that's a good point, too. I mean, shoot, I don't even know how I would remember or how I would list a top 25. Let's see. Actually, we'll do it together. I'll type it out and you guys can give me feedback. All right, so regarding the running backs, Herman is saying yes. Jarvis is saying yes. JW is saying no. A lot of no's. Hell yes. It seems like it's more like, 2-1 that yes, that you guys are surprised. When you have a running back like Jalen Milroe, he's gonna either run himself or they have a lot of design quarterback runs for Jalen. What's interesting about this team is they split out the running backs. So they send their running backs literally to the outside and then they just run with Jalen. It seemed like in the beginning of the year, the running backs were getting fed more, but now it doesn't. It seems like you're kind of just running with Jalen Milroe. I mean, you ran yesterday 38 times for only 104 yards, and I get it. Like a lot of the Jalen Milroe was sacked 4 times, so that goes against the rushing total. But it definitely does seem that Jalen Milroe is kind of like the running back one as well as the team's quarterback. All right, so so the AP was released. Let me see. If the AP is released, then I'll bring it up on the screen right now. And we could talk about it. Give me 1 second. I'm looking for the AP top 25. I'm interested to see, and I'll ask you guys about rankings here in just a second because with yesterday, kind of the way things are going. Oh, okay. Yeah, it looks like it's updated. Let me finish this next topic, and then we'll go to the new AP poll that just came out. Appreciate it, JW. Thanks for the heads up, man. I put Kalen DeBoer was smiling after the game. It's just something that stood out to me. I'm not mad that he's happy that the team won the game. It's a lot different, because I think a lot of fans, and I think us the same, kind of left that game. And I saw Jalen Milroe walking out. He wasn't smiling. The players were excited on the final play to kind of wrap things up and to win another SEC game. But it seems like, and look, you as the captain of the ship, you have to have an optimistic outlook for the most part. That was just interesting. And, it's almost like a forced smile. I mean, and I get it. Right now we have a microscope on every single thing that he's doing. But literally he was like, did you see this? He was walking out the field like this. Did you guys see that? Damon in the pain saying, face it, we're spoiled fans. And Case, who is in Tampa, glad you're safe, man, says, I think the problem with this team is they're still adjusting the style of coaching and play scheme offensively and defensively. Bama last year was slow in the first half of the year, and it picked up. That's a good point, too. Rams Norris TV in with the $4.99 super chat is saying, they single-handedly sustained our drives yesterday. Justice and Jam carried the load every time they had a chance. Empty set is killing us. They go empty set. They're starting to go more empty set again and again and again. And sometimes they'll motion into like almost like a option keeper for Jalen. Yesterday, did you see Jam got absolutely – man, he got lifted off the ground. Did you see that? It was an option read by Jalen. It turned into a good run, but, man, he got absolutely tagged. But a lot of empty sets I'm seeing. All right, let me bring up those top 25 rankings real quick. I didn't see that the AP was released, and I was going to ask you to help me with the rankings because, I mean, I thought, and as I said earlier on the show, I thought that Penn State, that they would lose, but they didn't. They came back and won. So here are the updated AP top 25 rankings. We'll start up top. Texas is now 5-0. Coming up this next week of college football is going to be absolutely wild. Texas takes on Georgia this next week in Austin, right? You have Ohio State. They'll take on Nebraska. Oregon, right? Take on Purdue. Penn State, they take on Wisconsin. Georgia is now 5. You have Miami, right? It's not updated, you guys are saying? Is it not updated? Oh, yeah, it can't. Yeah, it can't be updated because Ohio State lost. All right, so scratch that. All right, thanks. I was like, how is that possible? It usually is updated a little bit. All right, so scratch that. What I did want to talk about, though, was my usually when the AP comes out, I'll do like an individual video. So just stay updated for that. Thank you. And it's not updated, so just wipe that. My bad. What I wanted to talk about is the SEC standings, okay? So just stay with me here while I try to explain this the best that I can. So I started, as you know, this year, the SEC is just 1 versus 2, right, for the SEC championship game. And the tiebreakers are like this. Head-to-head in competition, record versus all opponents, cumulative conference winning percentages, capped relative total scoring margin, and then random draw, which I don't really understand. I guess it's just random. They just pick a name out of the hat. But on the left, as you can see, Texas A&M is 3-0 in their first in SEC play. They beat Missouri, Florida, Arkansas. Then you have Texas, who is 2-0 in SEC play. They beat Oklahoma and Mississippi State. LSU moves to 2-0 after beating Ole Miss. They also beat South Carolina. You have Vanderbilt, who is 2-1 with wins over Kentucky, Alabama. They lost in overtime to Missouri. Now, you do have Georgia, who is 3-1, right? They beat Mississippi State, Auburn, and Kentucky. Lost Alabama. That's why they're ahead of Alabama, because they have one more win in SEC play. But if Alabama beats Tennessee, then the teams, would obviously swap places. And, of course, Georgia and Texas, I would imagine. Is there anyone here that feels that Georgia could beat Texas in Austin? I think that wouldn't shock us, right? And then you also have Vanderbilt here. You have Tennessee. So, I mean, the parity in the SEC has been absolutely, it's been pretty fun. It's like the NFL light. Like, I think you go into these games, and besides like Auburn and Mississippi State, teams that have been struggling, I mean, shoot, look, Alabama just played South Carolina. South Carolina was just leading Alabama yesterday. Kentucky was leading Georgia. Kentucky should have beat Georgia. I'm going to forever say that. Ole Miss, I mean, that's clearly a dangerous team. I mean, they lost in overtime to LSU, Florida, I mean, Florida was leading Tennessee there for a while. Vanderbilt and Missouri went into overtime, right? I thought Florida, you know what? Florida mismanaged that game too. I mean, oh man, you know, it was interesting. I wouldn't, Florida should have, why did they kick that field goal? Why did South Carolina kick that field goal yesterday? And the foolishness, I agree, man. Auburn is terrible. But the crazy thing is, you know, they're going to show up for this Iron Bowl. Jeremiah Taylor is saying Texas A&M looks good. All right. The SEC is just, man, and there's so much good football. Let me ask you, okay, Georgia versus Texas. Who wins Georgia versus Texas? Type T for Texas, type G for Georgia. Game is in Austin. Jarvis, what's the line on that game? Georgia and Texas. I haven't looked at the line yet. I'm going to say Texas by 4.5. All right, so Lee has T. Bet James has Texas. Batman has Georgia. Jarvis is going to work on the line for us. Mostly Texas. Okay. Kimberly has Georgia beating Texas. Okay, yeah, I said 4.5. Texas 3.5. All right. Man, that's going to be a hell of a game. Because isn't it Bama and Tennessee at 2:30, and then right after that is Georgia and Texas? Yo, the amount of college football that we have is just wild. Heath is saying that Quinn doesn't impress him. I watched him against Michigan. I watched a little bit of the Oklahoma game, but when they started kind of running away, I kind of tuned out. I did like the way that he, worked the field against Michigan. Now, I know Michigan is not the same Michigan that they've been, but I did like the way he utilized his receivers. I know people like Arch as well, but Quinn definitely has a ton of experience. That would shake things up, though. Georgia wins that game. It shakes it up. You look at kind of the remaining teams that Texas has to play. It's tough. I mean, I think they still have to play Georgia, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M. Here's a look at Alabama's next few games, right? And this was the part of the schedule that I thought would be kind of like the challenging part. And now it's all been challenging after Wisconsin. Every single game has kind of been do or die, right? So the next 5, and I kept on seeing this during the preseason. This is it. This is going to be the hard part, but it's all been hard. Tennessee on the road. Alabama's favored by 2.5 in Rocky Top. Then you take on Missouri. I think Missouri is a team that's clearly trending the wrong direction, and that could be another rat poison type game. This game, you don't have to. I mean, Alabama fans are going to be fired up for this. They hate Tennessee. Everybody hates Tennessee. But this Missouri game, too, and it comes after, let's say you beat Tennessee in an emotional type game, right? Really, 2 top 10 teams coming in. Alabama gets on track, big win in Rocky Top. And then kind of that emotional, right? Ride it into Missouri, a team that you're supposed to beat. Man, you come into that game. That's another rat poison type game, 100%. Jamaica's saying Alabama needs a new DC. I think that's a common theme for sure. And then you take on LSU. But the good thing is you have 2 weeks to prepare. So, whoever might be nicked up or whatever, you get them healthy for LSU. I think they have a open week 2. So 2 weeks to prepare for the big one at Tiger Stadium. You take on Mercer, and then you get ready for Oklahoma on the road, and then Auburn. So, man. It's a tough schedule. head-to-head, within the last 5 games for each of the team. Alabama on the left, Tennessee on the right. You got South Carolina that Alabama defeated. Game against Vanderbilt, they lost. UGA, and it just something changed at the halftime of that Georgia game. And I haven't been able to really figure it out. Because up to that point, up to you in that first half of Georgia, this team, I was like so confident. Tennessee defeated Florida in overtime. Before that, they lost to Arkansas. That game was down to the wire as well. And then they beat Oklahoma in a game that they really controlled. But I wasn't like blown away by watching that game. I do like Tennessee's quarterback. I think a lot of people out there have respect for him. Very, very talented. Here's some rat poison for you too. This little thing is from ESPN on the left. Now, with that said, against Vanderbilt, it was 92%. And against South Carolina, it was 91%. And in this game, it's 53% for Alabama. So, there you have it. Is anybody going up to Rocky Top? So there's kind of where we stand. What I'll do is when the AP drops its updated rankings, I'll bring you a new video right here to Bama Football on YouTube. It'll probably be like a short or something like that, unless there's anything significant. But you know what? For the sake of it, do you guys want to just crank out like a top 10 real quick? What I'll do is I'll ask for you guys' feedback. So let me build a quick graphic. I'll see if I can do this in 2 seconds, and we'll do our top 25 together. Give me 1 second while I do this. Let me ask you this right now while I get this set up on the right. Give me your top 5 right now in college football. Right now in college football. What does your top 5 look like right now? And then we'll go over mine. College football rankings. All right. Guys ready? I think clearly it has to be Texas at the top, right? So we got Texas, and then we got Ohio State, right? Is anybody putting Ohio State over? No, it's Oregon. Is anyone putting Oregon over Texas? I don't think so, right? CC has it Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State. Okay, I like that. So Texas, Oregon. I mean, I was going to say Georgia. Maybe that game, since it was so close, I go Ohio State as 3, and then 4 Georgia. I just think Georgia would beat Penn State, right? Georgia, 5, Penn State, I guess. Where do we put Miami? Who wins, Miami or Penn State? And then what? 6, Miami. 7, Bama, right? 8, Tennessee, I guess. And then who cares about the rest? All right. Does this look okay? You got Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State, Miami, Alabama, Tennessee. I think Ohio State number 3 just because they barely lost to Oregon, right? Like on the road. I guess I could see Penn State at number 3 just because they haven't lost. and, Georgia's lost and Ohio State's lost, right? So you have the undefeated teams. I think Texas will absolutely be the number one team. And then I guess Oregon, right? Penn State 3. Everyone's having Penn State 3. Let me ask you this. I would imagine that we all agree that Ohio State should be ranked higher than Alabama, right? Ohio State higher than Alabama. And then what about Miami? That's a team like, I mean, they haven't lost. They found ways to win, right? But should they be ranked over Alabama or Tennessee? I don't know. What would be a great game would be undefeated matters, Jason saying. Miami versus Tennessee. See, Heath, I'm with you. I think Alabama's better than Miami. I rank the teams based off who's better, but I get it. Undefeated certainly matters. I would never have Penn State in my top 5 ever. But they continue to win. They beat USC on the road. Neil has it Texas, Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Miami, Bama. Yeah, so I think it's going to look something like that. Jason doesn't have Bama as a top 5. Jarvis has it at 7. That's where I have Bama too. It's crazy. I mean, to kind of zoom out and look at the rankings. And by the way, I thought that the AP rankings were released earlier. They haven't been updated yet, so my bad on that. Mike G's F Ohio State. They're posers. That's the other thing too, is Ryan Day does not win big games. And Ed, you're right too. Alabama could certainly be 3-3. Yes. And Kimberly's right. Look, Miami, this is a team that they had that squirrely win against West Virginia Tech, and then they were trailing against Cal and had to come back too. That's why I don't think come on. Cal? Hunter says the AP comes out at 1. Thank you, Hunter. Appreciate you, bro. In Ohio State, they definitely have some wide receivers. They're guys, yeah, absolute ballers for sure. Jason's saying 2 plays away from 3-3. Yeah? I mean, that's crazy to think about. That just blew my mind. 2 plays away from 3-3. Yeah, so that's kind of where we stand, right now at this point in time following Alabama's victory over South Carolina. I mean, look, they are 5-1. Clearly, we do know what the issues are. Defense, I think besides defense, you start to kind of point to other things Kalen DeBoer is responsible since he's the head guy. The Nick, you know what? Nick Sheridan, his offensive play calling has been up and down. It's I feel it's really good, and then it just gets weird, and then you don't use the running backs, and then you go into open sets, and then it doesn't really have rhythm. Besides the first drive. Javian, what's up, man? I appreciate you being here. Chance is it's okay. We're accustomed to it. And I know you can't answer this for the players, but from what you've seen, Marcus, what's up, man? I'm glad you're all right. Good to hear from you, man. From what you guys have seen, I'll end on this. Do you, and I know you can't, but just from seeing it and reading it and just kind of the vibe, does it seem like these players still have kind of that want, right? For those of you Rocky 3 fans, do they have that Clubber Lang, right? Working late. Do they still have that? Or has kind of NIL made them kind of salary soft, right? I always feel once you get put on salary, you get kind of a little thick in the waistline because you know that check's just coming in. But when you're working for something and you're trying to rebuild and trying to work for the ultimate prize, that's when you're your best, right? Do you have that want? Do they have that want? And you got to think with the amount of players that they have and, the talent that it is in them. But I just think right now people see them as vulnerable, which is crazy to think that people see, I would have never thought that, teams like Vanderbilt and South Carolina would see Alabama as that they could hunt them, right? Because now everybody's hunting Alabama. Tennessee probably cannot wait to get a shot at Alabama. He's showing some love for Nick Sheridan as a play caller. Sarah's saying that Lank has fizzled out. I kind of challenge that too, Jarvis. I'm like, I don't see that kind of hunger. And if you want to play that kind of in the locker room, whatever, I don't see it. I don't see that hunger from the team. Yo, B is asking, who's the best one-loss team right now? Yeah, that's a damn good question. Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, right? Those are the teams that have, lost games. Tennessee, I guess, is up there. We're about to find out Tennessee or Alabama. Yeah, Ross just saying that third Saturday is going to be lit 1,000,000%. And you know Tennessee is loading up on their cigars. They rarely get opportunities to smoke cigars. You know what's crazy? Watch, I'll show you this before I bounce out. I got my dad and my brother are visiting from New Mexico this week. So they've been here. They went to the game yesterday. I'll show you this before I bounce. We're going to put up my Halloween decorations today. I usually put them up like super early, but I wanted to wait just to kind of, do it all together. And see, like, I have scary Halloween decorations. All right, here's this. Okay, this is why I'm accustomed to, like, this is what I'm used to, okay? I got here in 2016. Do you see what I'm saying? So, like, these are the games that I've seen. And it goes back a lot further than this. And this is from Winspedia. Right? So, like, it's been total domination, and they got that. I see it as like a lucky punch just because I've never even remotely thought that, like, teams like Tennessee could beat Alabama. Like, this is when I got here, 2016. So, like, me mentally, this is what I see. 49-10, 45-7, 58-21. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, absolute, utter beatdowns. We all know, and right now, we all know that this is probably not going to be the case. We know that this game is going to be tight. As Coach Kalen DeBoer said, you got to get used to these, like, down-to-the-wire type games. This is what I am used to. I'm sure you are too, but I guess this is just not the game of college football anymore. But that's what I'm absolutely used to. Last year's game was crazy too. Man, last year's game was wild here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. JW's been here since '78. Yeah, I mean, look at all the. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to look at this. Tennessee, they were really doing things right here, from '95 to 2001. They were living on top of the world. Then the '90s, Alabama had its run. You know what's interesting is these two teams have gone on absolute streaks, right? It hasn't been like one or the other. It's been very streaky. Like from 71 to 81, you see what I'm saying? Rarely has there been like a back and forth. That's really interesting about the series. I mean, right, from 2002, I guess, to 2006, it got, maybe a little bit. Look at this domination right here under Coach Saban. My goodness. Tennessee fans never thought they're going to win again. Look at this. This is crazy. So, is it blurry? Let me see. I'll see if I can do it. Zoom in a little bit more. All right. Well, Rocky Top week starts this week. So, tomorrow is my show. I go live tomorrow at 10 a.m. Up until like 12:30 p.m. And I'll take you all the way to Coach Kalen DeBoer's press conference. We'll break it down. We'll hear from Josh Heupel as well. I'll put that up on the YouTube channel. I appreciate you guys being here so much and supporting the YouTube show. Sometimes I just go live, so be notified. We also have a really big Facebook channel. It is called Alabama Crimson Tide on YouTube. If you guys want to interact on there with us, I would appreciate it. I basically post questions, comments. I treat it like my website. Eric D is asking, if we beat Tennessee, then what? I think if you beat, I think honestly, I think if Alabama is able to beat Tennessee, I think that Alabama gets a ton of momentum from this particular game because Tennessee is a top 10 team. So you beat a top 10 team, you win on the road, you beat a rival, right? I think a game like this adds so much momentum to this team. I think it works both ways. You lose to Tennessee, your chances of playing for the SEC title diminish, and your chances of making the playoffs are pretty much gone. So now, your back is against the wall. So you win this game, I think you ride it all the way through. So, and like Jarvis was saying, people won't forget about Vandy, but beating a top 10 team right now at this point in time would be just what the doctor ordered for sure. And you can ride that in, but it works both ways. You lose this game, things get dicey. Things get really, really dicey. So I appreciate you guys being here so much. Thank you very much for supporting the product. Kyle Anderson, Bama Football on YouTube. If you want to become a fan funder, it's $2.99 to support the YouTube channel. Same thing with super chats, and those that have super chatted today, I appreciate it. Thank you for supporting me right here on Bama Football on YouTube. Stay tuned for a video later that talks about the AP Top 25 or anything else that pops up right here on Bama Football on YouTube. I appreciate you guys. Have a beautiful Sunday. Enjoy your NFL. Throw something on the grill. I know I'm going to. And enjoy this beautiful thing we call life. Coming to you from beautiful Hollywood, Alabama. Kyle Anderson, Bama Football on YouTube. See you, fans.